Dr. Jeffrey Halstead has been Canandaigua's hometown dentist for more than 35 years, offering routine dental care as well as cosmetic dentistry, implants, and dentures by their highly trained and experienced staff. Visit them online at canandaiguadentistry.com or find them on Facebook and Instagram.
Hello, everybody. Happy Victory Monday here on Bills Weekly here on Fingerless. I'm Paul Russo, Jim Sinicropi, Kyle Evans here with you as we recap the Bills' big road victory in Kansas City, 22-17. We'll get into a little bit of the rough bye week for the Bills as well, as it somehow only got worse, and we'll paint the playoff picture a little bit clearer here after the weekend. We'll also take a look ahead to Week 15 back in Orchard Park. Big game against the Cowboys on Sunday. Guys, how we doing? Big weekend for the Bills. Victory Monday. How are we feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we should be, just talking about how big of a win that was. But instead, if you look at ESPN, Sports Center, all they're talking about is the Patrick Mahomes sideline blow-up, I guess you would call it. And the post-game comments from him and Andy Reid, and about that call that was offside, which was clearly offside, and that's all we hear about. But you got to remember that the Chiefs don't lose very often. Patrick Mahomes is not used to dropping 4 of his last 6 games. So on top of the officiating that he thinks made the wrong call or shouldn't have called it, he's frustrated because they keep losing, and his receivers aren't helping him out very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know about the whole entire not used to losing because, as he brought up, I mean, this is this the worst year that the Chiefs have had in the Mahomes era? I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, well, they got 5 losses, and, they don't have the cap space to put together, a team as dominant in the old days. They don't have a Tyreek Hill or a Stephon Diggs. The receivers are horrible. They hurt them every single game. Doesn't matter how good your quarterback is if your receivers are that bad. They just need competent receivers, and they'll be fine. I mean, Mahomes is still just as good as he always has been. But, of course, this is a Bills podcast, and it was a huge win for the Bills. And it was really something to see Patrick Mahomes go to midfield at the end of the game and complain about a bad call to Josh Allen instead of just saying, hey, good games, as if Mahomes has never won a game due to a questionable call. And there was nothing questionable about that call.
No.
I mean, he was offside. Sorry that you gain an advantage when you start closer to the line, over the line of scrimmage. It's the rule's there for a reason, whether they call it or not. I mean, just to hear Mahomes complain about a call after we've seen him get the benefit of the doubt in Super Bowls, in playoff games, sorry. And then the other thing about it that, I heard some people talking about how, Josh Allen's not used to winning games like this. They won this is the 3rd time in a row they won in Kansas City.
Yep.
So while it is a big win for the Bills, I kind of expected it. We talked about it on our betting podcast Thursday. I think we all picked the Bills.
Hell, we even did that on this podcast even, too.
Yeah, so, I mean, it wasn't a surprise. I expected the Bills to win that game, and they got more work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bills are the only team to beat Patrick Mahomes 3 times. So that says a lot because they're not even in the division with the Chiefs.
Right. And all 3 of those were on the road.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into a bunch of different stuff with that, too. What's interesting, too, is with the call, people freaking out about when the Eagles were called for it as well last night. It wasn't a wide receiver in the situation, it was actually a lineman, but either way, I know it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't get called often and blah, blah, blah. Well, we did see it literally in the next game in line after get called. So
point of emphasis this year, they've called, right. I think that was maybe the 11th time this season offensive offsides has been called, as opposed to last season when it was like once or twice.
Right.
The last 2 years it was like once or twice, and then now it's up. So clearly they're being consistent with their calls. Right. So That's what you want in the league, though. You want consistency.
Yeah.
The only person that needs to blame themselves is Kadarius Toney. I mean, it's easy to, when you're a professional football player, it's easy to know when you're offsides or onside, and he's just obviously was not thinking about it, not being a professional, and even if he did score that, I think that I have a feeling that the Bills may have came back and answered. So I don't think like that call decided the game, but it certainly helped. If I'm a Bills fan, I'm more concerned about why the Bills didn't run the ball with just over 2 minutes left for 3 consecutive plays to try to get the clock down and get rid of some timeouts for Kansas City. But at the end of the day, the Kansas City offense is average because they have no weapons outside of Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco, who didn't play.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, the Chiefs, the way they were talking after the game, Mahomes, Reed, they acted as if that play would have won them the game. Like you just said, the Bills still would have had time on the clock, and they've known, in the recent meetings that it gets chaotic at the end of the games. The Bills are more than capable of marching down the field with Josh Allen as their quarterback. So I don't get how they think that play just officially cost them a loss or a win. And then Mahomes talking about Travis Kelce's whole legacy, how he's a future Hall of Famer, and you took a moment away from him, and it's like it's unbelievable to hear the comments that they were making. And if it was reversed and the Bills were doing this and Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs were flipping out, it'd be a totally different thing.
Yeah, it definitely it definitely knocks Patrick Mahomes down a notch in terms of respectability for a player at that level. You got to take the high road sometimes. You can't have everything go your way, for 6 consecutive years. And then this one play, and then it probably is going to cost. That loss will probably cost the Chiefs home field.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk probably more really about when we talk playoff picture for the Bills, really. But I mean, it dropped them to just being solo in the 3 spot, and there's a lot riding kind of on the game tonight in a way for a couple different teams with Miami, who in theory shouldn't have any problem with the Titans, but you have to go out and play the game still nonetheless at the end of the day.
Really rooting for Tennessee, if they want even a slight chance at catching Miami.
So
I would say it was a pretty good week overall in terms of like getting help. Other than the Browns, they probably could have used the Browns to lose, but the Steelers are starting to fall down a bit. The Colts aren't probably going to continue to win as much as they have.
The Bengals won because the Colts lost. So
that's true.
now the Bengals are back into the picture.
Broncos won again after that loss that snapped their streak last week. So it is tight. What do we have? 6 teams at 7-6. Yep.
Yeah.
Bills, Steelers, Colts, Texans, Broncos, Bengals, and only 3 of those 6 will be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the Bills right now would be out based on tiebreakers. So Buffalo Nation needs to take a deep breath because that win isn't enough. They got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, their conference record right now is killing them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you mentioned Cleveland. I kind of just I can't pull them, obviously, out of the picture, right? But they have a full game up. It's kind of like one of those things where I see them perceived to at least have one spot kind of locked in at the moment for them. I view it only because of the 6 teams all having the same record. It's 6 fighting for 2, and the Bills at the bottom of the heap at the moment still, but big stuff this weekend, like you said, Kyle, right, at the end of the day, to aid into that spot. And, in theory, right, not technically out of the division race either, but you need a lot of help there with 4 games remaining, coming out this week.
Back with 4 games
right.
remaining.
Well,
Dolphins
2.5 because of depending upon what happens tonight, more than likely.
Right.
But,
and the Bills get the Dolphins once, so that's
Dolphins
1 game.
close out the season. Cowboys, Ravens, Bills.
Yeah.
The Bills could actually still win the division as long as they were to lose those final 3 and the Bills, win all their games.
Yeah.
Need a lot of help. But I will say this before we start crowning the Bills Super Bowl champs now that they won this game is they're flawed too on offense.
Yeah.
They don't have wide receivers. You got Stephon Diggs, and that's it. Gabe Davis is awful. Where's he been? How many balls has he caught since November 1st?
Yeah.
1 or 2? He drops balls in key spots. Granted, Allen missed him wide open, but there's a good chance Davis might have dropped that one too if he threw it to him.
Yeah,
so the Bills don't have this prolific offense like they used to either, and the lack of receiving options after Stephon Diggs is a big reason why.
Yeah, I wouldn't call their receiving stat line here sprayed and pray in this essence, right? But James Cook was your leading receiver as a running back. Second leading receiver was Dawson Knox in his first game back off the IR, and then you get to Diggs with 4 receptions and 24 yards. So it's I wouldn't say confusing or anything like that. Or
Pedestrian offense.
it's weird. It's and
20 points last night.
yeah, 20 points.
What's
and
weird to me, though, is they moved the ball, I thought, pretty well in the first half, like they did against Philly.
Yeah.
And then in the second half lately, it just disappears. They keep going 3 and out. They're punting the ball more. It's just weird how the inconsistency in this offense. And they kept throwing screenplays to Diggs on the outside that were getting negative yards. I mean, Diggs had 11 targets and only caught 4 passes.
And they went away from Cook a little bit.
Yeah, they took him off the field for 2 of the 3 drives in the fourth quarter.
James Cook was the offensive MVP last night.
Yeah, I thought he was their most dynamic player. Had almost 150 scrimmage yards.
Yeah, I mean, and you have not a shot Latavius Murray here, but one of the bigger crucial plays of the game potentially involves Latavius in a passing situation, which that's not exactly what he's known for by any means, and almost cost the Bills potentially in a spot where at the very least, we knew yesterday James Cook wasn't messing up in that area either. So I don't know. It comes back to a point that I do want to talk about here. And again, the play calling down the stretch, like you kind of said a little bit there, Kyle. And it seems like, especially yesterday, was weird. The second half, I wouldn't say they took their foot off the gas, but then they, like the final drive for them there in the fourth, where you have to drain clock, or at the very least you have to draw one of the timeouts away from Kansas City there. And it was mind-boggling to me how they were passing downfield and everything like that, where just run the ball. You have to get the clock moving.
Ideally in that situation, and I had a nice little 4 p.m. game parlay going. I got the who played? I got the money line Vikings, the Bills. Who was the other 4 o'clock game I had? Anyways, that Bills game was the last one to finish, and so I had this bet riding on this Bills game, and they got the ball with about 2 minutes and 20 seconds left, in about midfield, and they threw 3 passes, and next thing you know, they didn't even get to the 2-minute warning in case he didn't burn a timeout. I understand in that situation, against most teams in the NFL, especially team that has Patrick Mahomes, you don't want to leave them time on the clock. So I can get why the Bills maybe wanted to be aggressive, because a championship team in those situations gets a first down, and then they run out the clock, and you get another first down if you have to. But to not get the first down and not take more than 20 seconds off the clock for your it was just a total failure, and they got lucky that it didn't cost them the win and their season.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously it's not the right decision, but you can see that they're just trying to be aggressive. They wanted to, get in the end zone and make the Chiefs have to go all the way down the field. And you remember, like I said, their past few meetings, the fourth quarters have been chaotic. Remember how quickly they've traded touchdowns in that one playoff game? So I think they were just thinking, like, being aggressive. But, yeah, they didn't chew much clock, and they're lucky that they got that 4th down stop.
I think when talking about the Bills and the Chiefs and the AFC in general, everybody's got to forget what happened in the past 5 years, because things are different this year. They're different for the Bills. They're different for the Chiefs. Certainly, both these teams don't have the offensive firepower that they used to. And if either one of these teams, the Bills or the Chiefs, are going to find themselves in the Super Bowl, something's going to have to change. Because, as a Bills fan, you got to be happy for that win, relieved for that win. Still not all that impressed, honestly.
Yeah, go back to that playoff picture kind of thing for a moment here. But the AFC, I mean, I said it at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to say it now more so, but it's wide open. I could make a case in my mind for about 5 different teams I could see realistically kind of making it to the Super Bowl at this point. And if you were to tell me 6, 7, or 8 other teams with them, I probably would be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Whereas, look at the NFC, it's a bit clearer at this point, I think. But
I don't know, man. The Cowboys, you expect to, and if we're going to talk about the NFC, the Cowboys, big win last night, but the Eagles fumbled that game away. But the Cowboys certainly look better than the Eagles. So then you got San Francisco and the Cowboys, let's say, but the Cowboys are the Cowboys. Like, until you see them actually get to an NFC Championship game, and I have no reason to think that this year will be much different than any other year. So I don't know. But that's what makes the league fun, is that we don't know who's going to be in the Super Bowl right now, and we're almost midway through December, and we don't know. We can't, it could be, you could put any one of 3 or 4 teams from the NFC and any one of 10 teams from the AFC in that Super Bowl, right? And I don't think people would be shocked.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things where, I mean, we talk about it a ton, whether it's on here, the betting podcast we do, or even off air, where it's like it's any given Sunday, and like that's what at least I mean when I say like Miami in theory, right, should dominate tonight against the Titans, but you don't know until you actually get going, and you never really know. All right, let's get back a little bit on track here with the Bills. The defense, I thought, after a couple rougher weeks, I thought one stepped up when they needed to, but I thought all things kind of considered played about as good as a game as they've had, probably in give or take about a month. That being said, they pressured Mahomes, but they actually only totaled for one total sack on the night. And it was just kind of really fluky. Taron Johnson led the team with 9 tackles, did have a fumble recovery. Tyrell Dodson had 8 tackles, Terrell Bernard 8 tackles. AJ Epinesa got things going pretty early on with a really nice tip interception as well. Those are kind of your leading guys on defense there. And, for what it's worth, we had a Von Miller appearance of sort, finally.
And they were questioning if he was offsides or not in that one play. But at Oliver, maybe the play of the game, one of the plays of the game defensively was that batted ball on the Chiefs' last drive on the third.
Yes.
It was third down. Plays like that win games.
Yeah, and I want to, I don't know if we'll talk really fully about this, but, he kind of wondered, I think, a little bit, with the stuff going on with the bye week, and even going back a little bit, right, you have a new offensive coordinator in the interim with Joe Brady and everything, kind of makes you wonder a little bit about, whether or not McDermott has a lot on the plate going on for him to not pay enough attention to the defense, right, because he's obviously the DC and play caller this year with it, but finally looked after, like I said, a couple rough weeks on defense with his play calling anyway, and play with the actual players, that it seemed like everybody was just kind of on the same page defensively for the Bills through the whole game. There wasn't a ton of
the hell, the Chiefs are 7.
Yeah, there was. I'm trying to find the right term here. There wasn't a ton of not wavering, but they stayed in line the whole game. There wasn't what I would call freelancing or anything like that. They all stuck to the script the whole time, and it paid off.
Yeah, they definitely looked prepared, and for me, it just seems like any time they play, a playoff caliber team, they're more prepared than when they play the Patriots or a team like that. I mean, look at how they performed against the Patriots. They gave 25 against Mac Jones. It's just so weird how a week-to-week basis and an opponent can be the difference in firing your team up. And even after the game, we saw the energy. They're backing up Sean McDermott. There was videos, we got your back after a tough week.
He looked relieved, didn't he, when that final buzzer went off?
Because imagine if they lost that game and that one play did stand, and that's how they lost. It would be a horrible morning.
All right, and it would, like I said, I mean, you have what arguably might be one of the rougher bye weeks I've seen in football in recent years, with obviously the Von Miller stuff, which we talked about last week a lot, to the article coming out about Sean McDermott during the week last week. Just as a bye week, right, you want to keep it quiet, and the Bills, not as a team in that essence, right, failed to do so, but, the headlines come out kind of damning them across different fronts, and they just came out on Sunday, handled business, and got the job done. And that might have been, you mentioned, right, the relief on McDermott, that might have been the first time in a press conference I've seen him in a while, win, lose, draw, otherwise, that he looked very relaxed for one. Kind of looked like he obviously had a weight lifted off the shoulder a little bit. It kind of makes you wonder about them now. We talked about, Jim, you said last week, right? I mean, kind of figure them moving forward a little bit here to actually be more of a contender type team. And it makes you wonder that if really we see the players in the groove, now if that coaching staff gets in the groove, makes it a really tough machine down the stretch to stop if you're an opposing team.
Yeah, I'm not convinced yet. Honestly, we'll see what happens against the Cowboys. Like I said, we all thought they would win this game. They did. They took care of business. The offense didn't look great. It looked good enough. The defense didn't look great, but it was good enough to beat the Chiefs, who we agreed, just aren't the same. But now they got the Cowboys coming to Highmark. That'll be the test. If they can get a win against the Cowboys at home, they'll be in a nice spot, and they go at the Chargers and then the Patriots at home for the next two games to close out 2023, and then on January 7th they'd go to Miami. So next week's game to me is huge, because the Cowboys, you saw what the Cowboys did to Philadelphia last night and how they've looked as of late, and it's going to be a bigger test than going to Kansas City and facing this diminished version of what the Chiefs used to be, I think. So, again, a little sigh of relief for Bills fans, but it's not out of the woods yet. And I'm as an impartial, not a Bills fan, but someone who does root for them as our kind of local team. I'm not convinced that they're where they need to be to compete for a AFC championship.
Yeah, I think our mood will definitely be different if they do go and beat Dallas. And I think it's huge that the game is in Buffalo. Dallas is 7-0 at home, and you could just see the energy they had last night.
Yeah.
Their fans were into it. Their defense just seemed very into it. But it's also weird. What Dallas defense is going to show up this Sunday? Is it going to be the one that played Seattle and gave up 35? Or is it the one that stopped a really good Eagles team and held them to 13, right? I believe it was. Yeah, so that's the biggest question mark for me. And can the Bills' offensive line contain Micah Parsons? That guy was playing with the flu last night and was wrecking the Eagles' offensive line.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a huge matchup.
But the Eagles gave away 3 fumbles inside the plus territory. So they did only score 13, but let's say they hold on to the football, they're probably going to put up at least like 27. They shot themselves in the foot with those fumbles, and yeah, they're ripped out by the Cowboys defense. They were all good defensive plays, but on the other hand, you had A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts all fumbled.
And remember, Dak Prescott fumbled.
Players.
Remember, the Eagles picked it up and ran it to the house, so they had a defensive
that
score.
was a defensive score. So.
Yeah, so I don't know. The Eagles' offense, I still think they're pretty good, but what worries me the most about the Eagles is their defense. No doubt about it. They've given up over 100 points the last 3 games.
Yeah, they couldn't stop them last night for the most part.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I remember talking about on here about how it's like they have a top 3 run defense and a very pedestrian at best passing defense. So they certainly got a bit exposed with that, I'd say, last night. But anyway, back to previewing this Cowboys game here.
They
Cowboys
did beat the
right.
Bills. The Eagles did.
Correct.
2 weeks ago. It took them to overtime, and that was just another huge opportunity for the Bills. I mean, we were talking 3 weeks ago when they had the Eagles bye week and then the Chiefs. Eagles on the road, Chiefs on the road, and a bye week in between. What a tough position the Bills were in, and we would said if they could just split those two, that would probably be great, and they did. But they also could have beat the Eagles in that overtime game, and then they'd be sitting here at 8-5, tied with the Chiefs, the Jaguars, and the Browns. So that overtime loss to Philadelphia still looms pretty large in terms of the Bills' positioning for the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it goes to a further point, I think, too. I talk about Dallas at home, but, the Bills on the road, that's only their second road win this year?
Very rare.
So, yeah. Anyway, Dallas 10-3, following the win, as we talked about. Bills currently a 2.5-point underdog, over under 49.5, 36 degrees for a high at the moment and cloudy on Sunday. So pretty much standard
4 o'clock game.
4:25. Yep. In fact, it will be America's Game of the Week because it's on Fox. So buckle up. At least we don't have to deal with Aikman on that game anymore. So anyway, excuse me. So this will be interesting because to me, we talk about maybe the Cowboys defense stepping up against that Eagles team, but Kyle, you bring up a very good point. What defense, though, for Dallas actually is going to show up? I've gone on the record a couple different times this year, and I'll say it again. That defense to me, very much the same as it's been the past 5 or so years. It's boom or bust. Like, yeah, your corners and safeties go and get these pick six records every year, except they get burned half the time because they're big play thinking. And to me, this might be a perfect opportunity as long as, obviously looking this far out, you never know what exactly might happen. But if the weather sticks with as is, where it's clear in essence for precipitation and everything like that, this is a type of game to me where you can get Diggs to break out again. You can get maybe Gabe Davis to break out a little bit. In addition to, we've seen Dalton Kincaid. This is really his first true quiet week in about a month or so, more than a month.
And because Dawson Knox is
Right.
back.
But to me, this is where you can kind of get these guys to break out a little bit, have a good passing game potentially. Maybe you throw the Cowboys off a little bit by running, obviously, with Cook and stuff like that. But it's very apparent that you can use Cook in the passing game and not have to worry about that. I think that has to be probably the game plan in mind going against the Cowboys on Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. Also, a big thing, too, that I don't think a lot of people are really giving credit is Dak Prescott. 25 touchdowns in the last 8 games. He's actually playing at an MVP level. By far, I think the best season we've seen from him. Only turned the ball over 2 times in those 8 games. They're 7-1 in their last 8 games. It's going to be a very, very difficult matchup, but I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out right on the fly here what I'm going to go with for our predictions.
I have a pretty good idea what I want to go with, but that's still a couple minutes down the road. When was the last time Dallas came to Buffalo? I didn't look that up, but I feel like it's probably been a while.
I believe
right?
it was 2014.
Yeah. So
When I think about Bills Cowboys, I think about 1997
maybe
Super. When was the Super Bowl
Three or-
with Emmitt Smith where the Bills
3 or
just throttled the Bills?
it'd be 1993 or 4. Right?
Yeah, whatever it was. It
Yeah.
was. I think it was the year after the Giants won in the
Right.
Super Bowl with the wide right kick, and then it was one of the worst Super Bowls ever. Man, the Cowboys crushed them. But of course, different era, different teams, and
93.
to me, you want the Bills to win, but if they can't handle this Cowboys team at home, then good. They're just not a Super Bowl caliber team,
Yeah.
So it's a true litmus test for the Bills, a bigger litmus test than I think that they've had even in the past couple games at the Chiefs and at the Eagles. Now you're at home. It's late in the season. You got the best team in the NFC coming in. Can you beat them on your home field? Because if you can't, then maybe all this talk about whether the Bills, are going to get in the playoffs or not is just a waste of time, because even if they are, they're not good enough to win a Super Bowl or win an AFC championship. So this Cowboys game is obviously the biggest game of the year for the Bills, and they get it at Highmark, and they should be fully healthy, or is their defense relatively healthy. So let's see if they got what it takes. I don't know if they do.
I mean, it'll be interesting because, like I said, I think this is going to be probably. To me, I kind of view it as maybe not like a type shootout, like the way I kind of envisioned maybe, the Dallas game yesterday in a sense, right? But we've seen what the Dallas offense can do, and even good defenses have struggled with it this year to try and handle it. And I don't know how you kind of exactly game plan for that. I'd imagine, obviously, there's going to be a lot of attention drawn to CD Lamb on defense. And I haven't seen anything outright in the injury report yet, which I think is good,
Well, Micah Hyde left the game and never returned. That's a huge.
Okay, so I do remember him going down, but I didn't see the report, so that's obviously potentially big. Obviously, we know the Bills' secondary is not at 100% and really hasn't been all year, so probably more of a draw of attention than for whoever's going to draw that assignment, I'd imagine, on Sunday. But, that being said, Tony Pollard has gotten, I wouldn't say outright quiet on the rushing attack, but it seems as though Dallas hasn't been running a lot, obviously, maybe with reason, but, Pollard, for the hype that he came into the season with, started off really good and kind of got muted here within the past couple weeks. So I think the Bills' interior, which, I think as long as they carry that momentum that they've had against the Chiefs, I think the Bills' interior is going to do really well, at least up front against Dallas. So I think a lot of it probably comes down to the secondary game for honestly both sides of the ball, oddly enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the Cowboys games from earlier this year, and this is what I mean. It's literally a week-to-week league. For example, back in mid-October, I get it. It's a month and a half ago. They played the Chargers and only won 20-17. And then you look at they beat the Cowboys or lost to the Cowboys the first time, 28-23. They're really only blowing out the teams that are pretty bad, like the Giants. Remember, they lost to the Cardinals by 12.
Yeah, and the San Francisco absolutely throttled them.
Yeah, 42-10.
But they they really flipped the script, beating Philadelphia as bad as they did yesterday. So I'm always suspect of the Cowboys, especially from a betting perspective, especially late in the year. It's easy to fade them, but last night was really something. And yes, it was at home, but it was against one of the top 3 teams in the NFC, and by record, it was the top team in the NFC, and they just crushed them. I mean, the Eagles were never in that game.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily the biggest game of the year so far for the Bills, Jim, but I do agree with you. At least up to this moment, it's definitely is. So, but the way
Let's hope it's not the biggest game of the year for them. If they win it, it probably won't be. Then the next week's game will be.
That's what I was about to say.
And the week after that, and then at Miami could be the biggest game of the year. So the Bills have put themselves in a position where every single game from here on out, whether it's the Cowboys next week or at the Patriots and Chargers, who are terrible, those are all huge games because they can't afford to drop one now.
Right.
Yeah, but if they are going to drop a game, I would say this would be the one because it's not, in conference, and that would ruin their record even more and drop them further back in tiebreakers.
It's only AFC teams the rest of the way for them after this.
Yeah, and I do think yesterday's win, though, guarantees them at least to still be in at Week 18. I mentioned it last show, I'm really thinking that the Week 18 might be win-and-in scenario, where that Dolphins-Bills game gets flexed to Sunday night. But we'll see. Still got to try to win this Cowboys
Remember,
game.
the Bills crushed Miami the first time they met, but now they're going to Miami. And, of course, that was a long time ago, too, when the Bills crushed Miami. But it'd be hard to envision a scenario where that game meant nothing for the Bills.
Yeah.
So,
no, definitely agree there. And that's the other thing, too. I mean, it kind of seems like, at least, looking that far ahead, the Bills in Miami, for whatever reason, seem to split a lot season series-wise. So, who knows? Who knows when we get to that point what we'll fully be looking at.
first things first, December 17th.
Yeah.
Cowboys
So,
to Buffalo.
Kyle, do you think you have your prediction locked in, or how do you feel about it if you're teetering on it?
Well, with you telling me that the weather's going to be pretty okay, I do think we're going to get maybe a higher scoring game. Not the Seattle-Dallas score, but give me Bills 30, Cowboys 24.
Ooh, wow. That gives you a little bit of that Seahawk Cowboy vibe.
Yeah, just not 41-35.
Right, sure. Yeah, I'm with you there. I definitely I do think the Bills win. And that's what I mean by, I feel like it's going to be kind of a shootout, but maybe not really. I don't know if I think it will get to that level. I'm leaning 28-20 Bills get the win. Eventually, and this is where I'm like you, Jim, with this, eventually the Cowboys are just going to mess up somewhere, right? They have a knack of,
they're due for a loss.
especially at least in my lifetime anyway, and Kyle, your lifetime as well. They just have this stupid knack. They're kind of like Notre Dame, where it's oh, you're right on the precipice of making it across that line, and it's oh, I just tripped over myself. And
this team feels different to me a little bit. Mike McCarthy's a Super Bowl winning coach. It's not Jason Garrett's Cowboys. Prescott is more experienced and is having, as we mentioned, an MVP type season. And I faded them last night against Philly. I thought the Cowboys were going to do what Cowboys do and lose that game, and I was wrong. And I'm not going to be wrong again next week. I hate to say it, Bills fans, but I got Cowboys 32, Bills 20.
Oof. I think it's huge, though. I really do that the Bills are home. I truly believe if the Cowboys were home, I'm taking them 100%. I just feel like the Cowboys, like we've seen, 7-0 at home, they're just a different team. I know they've been good all year, but they're 3-3 on the road, and they lost to the Cardinals on the road.
Yeah, long time ago though. It seems like things are shifting. Their momentum's rising. The Bills are kind of treading water, you know. 1 week they lose to the Broncos, then they come back and beat the Jets, and then they lose in overtime to the Eagles, and now they beat the Chiefs in a close game. I don't know if they're ready for Dallas, and even as happy as everyone is that the Bills beat the Chiefs last night, the Chiefs aren't that good, guys, and they needed a bad call to do it. Not saying that if Kaderi, the Bills couldn't have answered, but not impressed with the way the Bills closed that game out. Not impressed with the Bills' offense for the majority of the game. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope, because I don't like Dallas at all. They're my least favorite franchise in all of sports. But I don't think the Bills have what it takes to handle the Cowboys even at home. But keep your fingers crossed.
This is the week where we're going to say, well, typical Cowboys. They got back in the NFC East race, and then they just went and dropped a big game because the Eagles probably aren't going to lose the rest of the way. But again, this league is crazy. But they get the Giants twice. They get the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Seattle could give them a fight next week. But, yeah, I think if Dallas loses, their division hopes now are gone. So, huge game for Dallas, too. And they're probably still trying to get the 1 seed because it's possible. So, yeah, it's going to be just highly entertaining, I would say.
Hell yeah, Drew Lock.
It will be entertaining.
Entertaining as hell.
Did you give your pick yet?
Yeah, I said Bills 28, Cowboys 20.
So I'm the only one that got the Bills losing. So I'll prepare for my inbox to fill with hate mail from all the Bills Nation, around here in the Finger Lakes.
If there's one thing that Steve Mariucci has taught me from many Sunday mornings in my life, there's nothing wrong with being a lone wolf every now and then, Jim. So
I hate to say it. I just don't. We've talked about these Bills all season long, and they just have never shown the consistency. And I really was, because I was thinking the past couple of weeks, man, the Chiefs just aren't that good. They really have an average offense, even with Mahomes. And then I said, you know what? So do the Bills. Like, outside of Stephon Diggs, they got nobody. Gabe Davis is having the worst second half of the season that you could even imagine. How could you imagine he could go this many? He had 0. Did he catch a ball last night?
no, he
2 targets for 0 yards.
I mean, come on.
It's a
That's
second.
your number 2 wide receiver in the supposedly, wide open, high-powered Bills offense.
Yep. Second time this year he's had 0 yards, and in another game he had 6 yards. So he's not just hurting himself now. He's hurting himself this offseason when he's going to be looking for a contract.
And why? Because Knox is back. Does all of a sudden Kincaid not get the
I know
targets and yards? He was coming on.
They got to. I know they just gave him an extension, but they got to somehow try to trade him. In my opinion, that kid when he was, when Dawson Knox was out, Dalton Kincaid was a big part of the offense. They were moving the ball. It seemed a lot with him. And then just like the first 6 weeks when Knox was on the field, you just didn't notice Dalton Kincaid.
Right.
So it's kind of like a bad thing that Dawson Knox is back.
How often and I don't have the numbers obviously in front of me, but I'd be really intrigued to see the number of times Kincaid and Knox were on the field together in a 2 tight end set.
Yeah,
because that was something that allegedly they wanted to do going into the year.
Yeah, and then they went away from
Right.
it because they had to, and
Right.
now it seems to be back. And I don't know. We'll see how it does next week. But
And I'm assuming do you have the target number in front of you? Or
no, I
okay, well, don't worry.
One bright spot to the Bills' offense yesterday.
Yeah.
One bright spot, and that was James Cook.
Yeah.
Yep. Feed him the ball more too. No reason why he shouldn't have had the ball more in the fourth quarter.
Well, it goes back to that point, off the field for 2 of the last 3 drives or something like that, and it's not the first time we've seen that happen for different reasons,
They had Latavius Murray and Ty Johnson getting carries, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow, James Cook has been your most dynamic player. What did he do? get McDermott mad again? Like, remember he got benched against
Right.
Denver? Like, what did he do?
Yeah, because he fumbled the ball. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it would be like taking Thurman Thomas out of the game, at the end of the game back when the Bills were Super Bowl contenders, and you just would never see that. Not that James Cook is Thurman Thomas, but yesterday in Kansas City, he was the closest thing to
Right.
Thurman Thomas that the Bills have seen in a long time.
No, it's any RB1 in the league, right? Whether it's James Cook to McCaffrey to, let's see, I don't even know other RB1s off
Well,
the
there's
top
lots
of
of
my head.
RB1s
Ryan
in the league, and
Ryan Robinson, right? Saquon, it doesn't matter. Like,
they're all going to be on the field when
Right.
you're trying to run out the clock and,
Right.
get a first down and grind out a win.
Yeah.
So I just, again,
and even then, they didn't even run the ball anyway to to do that. So, yeah, it's an interesting time. It's been an interesting week and weekend for the Bills, and I think overall, though, at the end of the day, a win's a win, right? And they'll gladly take it and move on and prep for the Cowboys at this point.
Yeah, how about all the teams that have backup quarterbacks going in this wild card
jeez.
race? I mean, Jake Browning, Mitchell Trubisky,
You got dinged up too.
C.J. Stroud's in concussion protocol, so we might
Minshew.
see Davis Mills.
Minshew, Stroud's out. Steelers have got to back up. Like you said, really, of all the teams the Bills are tied with, you got Russell Wilson and Josh Allen. Those are the only two true starting quarterbacks of those teams that are 7 and 6, and then the Browns
I was gonna say the disrespect to elite Joe Flacco.
Looks
8
good.
and 5 are going with Joe Flacco, who's probably a better option than any of the quarterbacks the Browns have wheeled out since September.
I
Both
was
Steelers play each other this weekend,
Oh, so one of them will lose, one of them will win. So that's
and Texans are playing the Titans, like we said, probably without C.J. Stroud, and the Broncos get the Lions, who, man, they have disappointed lately.
Yeah.
Don't look like they're a for real Super Bowl contender as of the last 4 weeks. Started with that Thanksgiving game. To me, that's how it felt.
And people still aren't giving the Broncos credit. I don't know what they need to do, but they were 3.5-point underdogs against the Chargers, and it was the lock of the week. They blew them out.
I can't believe they're 1-5 at one point, and now you look.
That's another one too we didn't mention. Herbert's out too now for
Easton
probably
Stick.
probably the rest of the year.
That's who the Bills are going to
Trivia time. Where'd Easton Stick go to college?
Ooh, I don't know that one.
Any idea, Jim?
Wouldn't be anywhere too good, is it?
Wow, the disrespect to North Dakota State.
Oh yeah,
One of the
that's
best
why we don't-
FCS teams of the past 20 years.
So that helps the Bills. Now they don't have to worry about him when they face them on the Christmas Eve, December 23rd. They got to go all the way out to L.A. to face the Chargers, but
Darn
They
it.
should be able to beat Bailey Zappi in what, week 16 is that?
Hey, that's another thing too we didn't really mention. Patriots, second team eliminated in playoff contention in the NFL this year.
yeah, that's nice for Bills fans. Let's see if they play spoiler on
Right.
that's New Year's Eve game.
Yeah, shout out to them for beating the Steelers last Thursday night.
The NFL, where anything can happen. Anyway, before we dip, I did want to say I was hoping you were going to say Tim Couch, Jim, for best quarterback the Browns have had since Lyon, and you're that or Jake Delhomme to really.
He went to Kentucky.
Yes, he did.
Good to answer that question.
Yes. Kyle, you just had a big old smirk over
We'll
there.
talk about it. It's some MLB stuff. We
okay.
just had a trade with the Yankees and Dodgers.
Oh, all right.
Yankees
How about
traded for Otani.
Well, they just traded one of their they traded one of their prospects that I don't agree with.
Oh, shit. Oh.
Should I just say it? It's a Bills. Trey Sweeney.
No.
I'm dead serious. I cannot believe it.
Oh,
Who'd
my
they get back?
gosh.
Left-handed relief pitcher Victor Gonzalez and prospect some guy I don't even know how to say his name. So I don't get the trade. Whatever. But yeah, this is for another podcast.
Yeah, just a little bit. Now I'm disappointed.
But yeah, that opens room for Otani. So.
Yeah. Opens room for Yamamoto.
Game of the year next week for the Bills. Let's see what they can do.
Absolutely. All right, so I think that we'll nail the dismount on that and get out of here on that note. Appreciate everybody for listening and watching. You can find Bills Weekly here on FingerLakes1.com, the FL1 YouTube channel, all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Amazon Music. We'll be back next Monday at 10 a.m. Until then, let's go Buffalo.
Next one